Welcome to this explainer. So today we're diving into a demographic reality that is, honestly, just absolutely fascinating and probably a bit surprising. When we usually hear about the Middle East in the news, the focus is so often on conflict, division, or displacement. But right in the heart of that region lies a thriving Christian community that completely defies the odds. We're talking about the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Today, we're going to see exactly how this community hasn't just survived, but truly flourished in a really complex part of the world.
Let's kick things off with a pretty high-stakes question. Where do minorities actually turn when the Middle East erupts? It's a huge question about finding safety in a historically volatile region, especially when extremist groups are actively trying to tear the social fabric apart. When violence breaks out, people desperately need a place where the rule of law and societal tolerance can actually shield them.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to start with a human story. Take Ammar alias Ayoub. He was a taxi driver who fled extremists in Iraq just days before his city, Mosul, was completely overrun. He knew for sure that his family could be killed simply because of their faith. He was looking for a haven where they wouldn't be targeted, and he found that safe haven in Jordan. And Ammar's story? It's echoed by thousands of others who've crossed borders just to escape relentless targeting.
Section 1. A regional safe haven. The contrast here is just incredibly stark. You look at neighboring nations like Iraq and Syria, and you see violent displacement and religious persecution tearing entire communities apart. But cross the border into Jordan, and you find a secure, pluralistic society that's anchored by this really fascinating bedrock: tribal stability. These local tribes have lived together for thousands of years. Christians and Muslims are deeply, deeply familiar with each other, and that creates a kind of societal tolerance that actively resists division.
Section 2. Centuries of history.
Now, this isn't just some recent development. We are talking about a continuous presence stretching all the way back to the 1st century apostolic age. Jordanian Christians can trace their roots right back to just after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. By 629 CE, Arab Christian allies like the Ghassanid tribes were actually fighting right alongside early Muslims in regional battles. Fast forward to the Arab Revolt in 1916 against the Ottoman Empire, all the way to today, where they actively participate in the modern Jordanian armed forces, serving shoulder to shoulder with their Muslim neighbors. And these historical roots are literally etched into the landscape itself. Jordan is part of the Holy Land after all. We're talking about Al-Maqtas, the officially recognized baptism site of Jesus. You've got Mount Nebo, where Moses is said to have looked out onto the Promised Land. There's the ancient city of Madaba, housing the oldest known Mosaic map of the Holy Land, plus magnificent Frankish and Arab Crusader castles are just scattered across the country. These sites draw countless pilgrims every year, and they're fiercely protected and celebrated by the Jordanian state.
Section 3. The demographic shift.
To put things into perspective, back in 1930, Christians made up a massive 20% of the total Jordanian population. That's 1 in 5 people. They were a highly visible, very large demographic bloc. But today, that proportion has shrunk down to just about 2.1%. Now, here's where it gets kind of wild, because it's a real demographic paradox. You see, the absolute number of Christians in Jordan actually grew. Today, there are roughly 250,000 to 400,000 Jordanian Christians. So their overall population increased, but their percentage within the country shrank significantly. So why did that happen?
Well, this drop isn't some tragedy of forced displacement. Instead, it's the complex result of 3 very specific dynamics. First off, Jordan has absorbed massive successive waves of refugees, Palestinians, Iraqis, and Syrians, who are predominantly Muslim. Second, there's historically been a higher birth rate among Muslim families. And third, there's been a steady rate of Christian emigration, usually folks just looking for better economic opportunities abroad.
Section 4. Society and institutions. Despite that massive demographic shift we just talked about, Jordanian Christians form a huge part of the kingdom's elite. They hold an incredibly impressive array of high-ranking roles in both the public and private sectors. For instance, the position of Deputy Prime Minister was recently held by Rajai Muasher, a Jordanian Christian. You have Dina Kowers serving as Jordan's ambassador to the U.S. They are high military commanders, they're top business leaders. They absolutely are not marginalized, they are leaders.
And to make absolutely sure their political voice doesn't just get drowned out by those changing demographics, they have guaranteed political representation. Out of the 130 seats in the Jordanian National Parliament, a minimum of 9 seats are legally reserved specifically for Christians.
They're also deeply, deeply woven into the everyday fabric of Jordanian life, running institutions that serve absolutely everyone. We're talking top-tier educational facilities like the National Orthodox School, which educates both Christian and Muslim students. I mean, even members of the royal family have attended Christian schools. They also built pioneering healthcare facilities, like literally the very first hospital in the city of Asalt. Plus, they maintain their own ecclesiastical courts to handle personal status matters, which ensures religious freedom right down to their private lives.
And this integration? It's supported at the absolute highest level. King Abdullah II has made it remarkably clear. He stated, "Arab Christians are an integral part of my region's past, present, and future." Having that explicit, vocal backing from the monarchy provides this incredibly vital layer of security and belonging.
Section 5. Citizenship over coexistence.
Now, we do have to acknowledge that Jordan's very pluralism actually makes it a target for groups like ISIL, who actively try to penetrate this unity to create religious discord. But here is the country's fascinating defense mechanism: local tribal unity. Parliamentarians and researchers point out that because these same tribes have lived together for millennia, their mutual acceptance is basically an impenetrable bedrock. Extremists try to maneuver their way in, but those deep societal bonds and that shared Jordanian identity completely block their efforts.
Which brings us to a really fascinating philosophical shift championed by local leaders like Catholic priest Father Rifat Bader. He argues that we actually need to change our vocabulary. He wants to move past the word coexistence. Why? Because true equality means abandoning the idea of merely coexisting next to someone who's different. Instead, he says we need to focus on the values of citizenship. It's about embracing the shared rights, the shared obligations, and the pure equality of being co-citizens of the exact same nation. If you focus on citizenship, all those other differences just sort of fade into the background.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to chew on. Look at this incredibly resilient, deeply integrated oasis of stability that Jordan has managed to cultivate. In a world that feels increasingly fractured by religious and ethnic divides, what can other nations actually learn from this model of unity amidst all that regional chaos? How could the principles of tribal solidarity, institutional integration, and true equal citizenship be applied elsewhere? Think on that for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning, keep learning,